Palmer School District. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Welcome back from your summer breaks. To view this meeting's presentation documents, please access Board Docs. The link to the Board Docs website can be found via the D38 website on www.lewispalmer.org on the Board of Education Meetings webpage. To view the live stream video of this meeting, please go to the Lewis Palmer School District 38 YouTube page. If you guys don't mind, I'll go ahead and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can you remind him of roll call?
Ms. Wood, would you do the roll call?
Yes. Ms. Phillips? Here. Mr. Taylor?
Here.
Ms. Upchurch?
Here.
And it's my understanding that Mr. Schwartz is absent and excused this evening. And is Mr. Clausen arriving just a bit later?
He had a personal emergency he had to take care of, and he will get here as early as he can.
Okay.
Mr. Clausen. Thank you. I want to read the public comment guidelines. And before I read that, I'd like to apologize because I haven't followed these guidelines. And it was an oversight on my part. I apologize for it, and I'll do better. Per Board Policy BEDH, public participation at school board meetings. All regular and special meetings of the board shall be open to the public. Because the board desires to hear the viewpoints of all citizens throughout the district and also needs to conduct its business in an orderly and efficient manner, it shall schedule time during some board meetings for brief comments from residents and property owners of the district, parents, students, and employees. There is one time for public comment, and it is limited to 30 minutes. In an effort to allow all who wish to speak, the amount of time dedicated to each speaker will be dependent on the number of people who sign up, with the entire public comment period not exceeding 30 minutes. If 10 or fewer people sign up, each person will have 3 minutes to address the board. The sign-up sheet for public comments will be available at 5 p.m. in the Learning Center meeting room. The board respects the rights of the public to speak on matters concerning the operation of the schools. We believe that public comments that are critical of district staff, however, often cause unnecessary harm to those employees and to the education of our students. As a result, we prefer that members of the public share any criticisms of employees in writing with the superintendent, who is responsible for supervising all staff and then involving the board as necessary. If you choose instead to address a personal issue publicly, please understand that the board does not endorse the comments of any speaker and reminds all who speak that they assume the risk of legal action by district employees in the event the affected employees believe that any comments about them violate legal standards. Lastly, keep in mind, we may have K through 12 students in the audience. Please keep all comments appropriate to our audience. I'd like to make a motion now to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Any comments or questions? Hearing none, Ms. Wood.
Ms. Phillips?
Aye.
Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch?
Aye.
Thank you. Moving right along to section B of our agenda, the recognitions and comments, I'd like to turn time over to Dr. Casey Summers now.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor, and thank you all for being here. We have a few special recognitions that we'd like to share with you all this evening. The first, unfortunately, is honoring our former D38 Public Information Officer, Ms. Julie Steffen, who unfortunately is unable to attend. This evening, we wanted to recognize her for her service long tenured as it was to the District 38 community, and wish her well in her future endeavors, which will be a coordinator, administrator with the Tri-Lakes Chamber of Commerce. So we look forward to continuing to leverage the partnership in service to the community with that recognition. And we'll just keep moving to the second one, which is Mr. Michael Mozingo. Mr. Mo, are you in the... Yeah, very good. Mr. Mo. Mr. Mo, actually, I'm going to have you come forward here. So our D38 teachers, we know, are fantastic in every way. Good to see you, sir. Thanks for being here. Absolutely. So we, again, just have fantastic educators, both in present as well as in retirement mode. And
That would be past.
past mode, yes, absolutely. And Mr. Mozingo, who is officially retired, has been awarded the prestigious Colorado Bandmasters Association's 2021 Hall of Fame Award. And I believe it was 27 years of teaching in our district. Does that sound
Yes.
right to you? Okay. That's very good. And so this is an award that is handed to just one Colorado band director every year, or one inductee to the Hall of Fame every year. And I believe you were inducted, was it over July 15th?
Yes,
Is that right?
the convention was July 15th.
Excellent, excellent. So we are just wanting to pass along additional praise and recognition, and thank you again for your long tenured service. And now you'll be remembered in the Hall of Fame. Do they have like a bust or like something that? I was just thinking about the NFL Hall of Fame, so I'm not sure how they signify that. If you just want to.
The Hall of Fame, the Colorado Bandmasters Hall of Fame is on display in the music building at the University of Northern Colorado. So you can see everybody's picture.
Wonderful.
And hopefully mine's a good one, right?
Well, I think we do have a small expression of our recognition for you, Mr. Mo.
And Mr. Mo, I think
Thank you.
congratulations, and I think it's fair to say that you have affected hundreds of students, including individuals who've gone on into music education and music performance. So congratulations on a career that was time very, very well spent and invested in our kids. Thank you.
Thanks,
It
Mr.
was
Mo.
my pleasure.
Thank you. All right, we have one more special recognition, and this time it is a very special leader in our system. So, Principal Bridget O'Connor, please join us. Yes, Mrs. O'Connor. Look closer. So we are very blessed to have such wonderful school leaders in our system, and there is a big organization called CASE, which is Colorado Association of School Executives, which has a new award, which specifically is designed to go to principals within their first 3 years. It's called a Rookie of the Year, Principal of the Year award, and Mrs. O'Connor, who was nominated by one of her colleagues, most fittingly has earned that award. I think the inaugural award to be considered the rookie, although I don't know that we can call you a rookie much longer for one more year. But I think her commitment and investment into every single one of her students, her staff, and the broader LPHS and E38 community is something that we are just very grateful for her sacrifice and her tireless efforts in that regard. She has a very nice glass plaque that she won't let me pass back to her, which is totally okay. Thank you. Maybe I'll let Ms. Phillips do that. But we are just really honored and so proud of you. And you just make leadership and learning and taking care of our kids something that we are just very, very grateful for. So thank you for all those efforts. Ms. Phillips, anything else that you would like to add?
Of course, I think that you have set the bar high for the next Rookie of the Year. So, and we are really, really fortunate to have Miss O'Connor in our district. I'm so grateful the last year for the tone and the culture that you have set for the students at Lewis Palmer High School, and hundreds of them are thriving under your care. So thank you so much for all that you're contributing. And I know that you are not one to be looking for awards or anything, but this one is very well deserved. So congratulations.
Absolutely. And we won't make you do the speech like you did up at Case, but I did just a quick story behind that. So we were gathered, all these different secondary school leaders were in the room, and Bridget went up and just made a fabulous speech. And the award winner from Cherry Creek High School, who was the principal of the year for the state of Colorado, was like, oh my gosh, I have to follow Bridget O'Connor's speech, and now need to say something. But you did a wonderful job representing our district one more time. Thank you, Bridget. Appreciate that. And I believe I'm turning it back over to you at this point, Mr. Taylor.
Yes, do we have a sign-up list for public comments? So I will call Carolyn Bedingfield, a resident. Please.
My name is Carolyn Bedingfield. I live on Beacon Lake Road in Monument. I've had kids or grandkids in the district school since 1990.
Let's make sure it's on.
She just has to get closer.
Yeah, just speak a little bit closer right there. That's okay. We can angle it down. And you can get like, there you go. Yep.
My name is Carolyn Bedingfield. I live on Beacon Lake Road in Monument. I've had kids or grandkids in the district school since 1990. I wish to speak about the masking policy. The Delta variant has particular collection of mutations in the spike protein that have like projection you see in rendering the virus. They make it extremely effective in attaching to human cells and gaining entry. If the original COVID strains were covered in syrup, this variant is covered in ultra-fast drying Gorilla Superglue. There are 2 recent publications which demonstrate that the viral loads in the back of the throats of infected patients are 1,000 times higher in the Delta variant than with previous variants. This much higher load, plus the ultra stickiness of the Delta strains for adhering to human cells, makes it remarkably more infectious than previous strains. You may have heard of R0, which is, in a nutshell, the number of people to which an infected person would be expected to transmit the virus. Early versions of the virus had 2 to 2.5 R0 values. So one infected person would infect 2 or more people on average. Delta has an R0 of about 8. In the infectious disease world, that's almost unheard of. Chickenpox and measles are about all we have ever seen that spread that efficiently from human to human. This changes the storyline completely from earlier in the pandemic. It makes this surge in many ways like a completely different pandemic event. There's another recent publication out of Singapore with data that confirms something we suspected. The viral loads in the throats of vaccinated persons who become infected with Delta ripen at identical rates as in unvaccinated persons, but only for the first few days. After 5 days,
Much better. You're
after 5 days or so, the viral loads in the vaccinated person start to quickly drop, whereas those in the unvaccinated person persist. This key set of observations is important for several reasons relating to vaccinated persons serving as vectors for spread. This pandemic, round 2, is primarily being observed in younger patients than in round 1. Our children's hospitals are even already filling up with full because of the Delta viral dynamics. It is much more capable of causing severe disease in a larger swath of the population. You spew enough of this human pathogen on somebody without immunity, and it's not going to end well. This sets us up very poorly from the beginning of the school year. I ask the board to please reconsider requiring masks of all kids and staff at our schools. This variant is much more infectious than what we dealt with last year. Please protect our teachers, staff, and students. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up would be James Howell, resident.
James Howell, district resident. Controversy is inherent in the democratic way of life. It's essential, therefore, that the study and discussion of controversial issues have an important place in education for citizenship in a free society. Students can develop into free citizens with informed loyalty to democracy only through the process of examining evidence, fact, and differing viewpoints, through the exercise of freedom of thought and moral choice, and through the making of responsible decisions. So in quoting from policy IMB D38's current policy on teaching controversial issues, there's a lot to like about how this policy frames the issue. First, rather than declaring some ideas to be forbidden or out of bounds or untouchable, it connects factual discussion and the expression of diverse viewpoints directly to the idea of democracy. Secondly, it links the necessity of discussing difficult topics with both political freedom and intellectual freedom. Finally, it values informed loyalty to democracy over uninformed loyalty to an ideology. D38's policy clearly values intellectual freedom more than school district resolutions that aim to punish or forbid the discussion of topics such as the role race plays in America's legal system or public policy. It's also preferable to laws passed at the state level that declare some topics out of bounds and in the process trample on local control. Policy IMB also says teachers can express their personal viewpoints and opinions, but they also are obligated, quote, to be objective and impartially present the various sides of an issue. In the last paragraph of Policy IMB, I found this. When controversial issues or controversial materials are used as part of the instructional program, alternative learning activities shall be provided by the school when feasible at the request of a student or the student's parents or guardians. In other words, a family can always opt out of material they find objectionable. Policy KEC, which covers public complaints about instructional resources, says this, quoting, "The board shall not permit any individual or group to exercise censorship over instructional materials and library collections, but recognizes that at times a reevaluation of certain materials may be desirable." It goes on to establish a process for handling complaints that begins with the person who objects filling out a formal complaint that documents the specific criticism of the material. I hope the district sticks with this process for handling complaints. I'm confident that these existing policies can deliver exceptional educational outcomes because I've seen them embodied in the teaching of Mr. Ewig, now retired. My son took 2 AP classes from Mr. Ewig on topics relative to history and government, and I had the opportunity to discuss current events with Mr. Ewig a number of times. I always got a reading assignment. I always learned something during our talks, and I couldn't tell you what side of any issue he was on. My son had the same experience. So you have policies in place that elevate intellectual freedom and support your teachers. I hope you stick with those policies. They're good ones. Thank you.
Jackie Burhans, district resident.
Wrote it down this time. Hi, my name is Jackie Burhans. I live in Woodmore within the district boundaries. I'm a parent of a Palmer Ridge alumnus who went to LPSD from K through 12th grade. First of all, I really want to thank the district for your thoughtful response on CRT, diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's one of the best responses I've ever seen on any subject, and a striking difference from the meaningless resolution on sex education signed by a previous school board. Since CRT is a legal theory, unless D38 is converting itself into a law school instead of a K through 12 public education district, it is not applicable to our district. It's merely an attempt to create false dissent and distract from the very real work of the district and this school board. One of the areas of very real work is to deal with this next phase of COVID-19 and the Delta variant. Here, I'm disappointed in the district's approach. And as we see things get worse, I think your approach is going to have to change. I'm already seeing the changes in our local businesses. Getting and keeping the school open while keeping the students, teachers, staff, and community members safe is one of your top short-term priorities. We do not live in isolation from one another, and what affects one affects the rest of us. However, you have many other short, medium, and long-term challenges that you face as well, and one that I want to highlight is the ongoing and recurring challenge of teacher pay. The pandemic upended lives severely for 18 months and made people think hard about what is truly important. The priority of family and health has risen to the front of everyone's mind, and we have seen people change careers, retire, and truly focus on work-life balance. People ask themselves if what they are doing is worth it, given the risks that they face and the reward they get, both in terms of respect and income. While it's nice to say that teachers do it for the outcome and not the income, that doesn't mean they don't need and deserve a competitive salary. When these things are out of balance, we risk losing the people and programs that make D38 the outstanding district that it is today. Beyond the normal attrition through retirement, when teachers take jobs in the private sector or in another school district that pays them better and values their health and safety, D38 loses. When we cannot offer programs and courses that our students want to study because we can't hire new teachers due to pay and safety, we all lose. I wish you the best in solving these actual problems that the district faces and stand ready to help in any way that I can. Thank you.
Thank you. The next agenda item is board member comments. Tiffany, could we start with you and then go to Teresa and then myself?
Sure. First of all, I want to start off by saying welcome to a new school year. I am optimistic and excited about the 21-22 school year, and I want to congratulate our incoming 2022 graduating class. As always, thank you for your comments, and thank you for that process of democracy that we have, that freedom to be able to express and air your thoughts and your grievances and your ideas with your local representatives, which is the school district, it's us, so thank you. I also wanted to say that I do feel a sense of excitement, and I do feel a sense of motivation, and I'm eager to roll up our sleeves and drive deeper into our big rocks, our 5 strategic plans that we've been talking about, and our vision and governing through policy. And I'm excited to be a part of that, and I hope to continue to be a part of that. I also want to welcome our new students and our new staff to our district that we have coming in, and to everybody for a new school year. And I hope everyone has an amazing and positive first day of school. And I want to say thank you to Dr. Summers and his leadership team as we navigated last year and this year, and we didn't rest on our laurels. We continue to push forward, and we will continue to push forward. I also wanted to remind my fellow board members that the Colorado Association of School Boards has a regional meeting September 1st in Pueblo, and that's open to all of our school board directors. August 30th, there's a deadline for resolutions for the CASB Delegate Assembly, and the Delegate Assembly is October 23rd in Fort Collins. And then our fall conference is December 2nd through 4th. Keep those dates on the back of your mind: September 1st, October 23rd, and December 2nd through the 4th. Something that we I think we ran out of time this year, but something we've talked about, and I hope that we can maybe partner with another school district as an idea. The feedback we got from the last delegate assembly when we presented our resolution was to include in the standing resolution, which is called SR7, and standing resolution SR9, which says Colorado's Constitution acknowledges the diverse nature of Colorado school districts and establishes locally elected school boards vested with control of instruction as the guarantor of educational quality responsive to local needs. And one of the feedback that we got from several school districts throughout the state was to amend that standing resolution to insert the Colorado Constitution Article 4, Section 15, and also to insert CRS 22-32 109. And I can either forward that or I can read it aloud. Basically, it declares that the directors of each local district shall have the control of instruction of public schools of the respective districts, and it sets forth the role of the board to determine the educational programs to be carried on in the schools of the district, and to prescribe the textbooks for any course of instruction. The reason also that this is relevant is this is the year that we'll start to see our academic standards in social studies, dance, drama, theater arts, music, and visual arts are going to be revised this year at the state level for 2022. And it's required under House Bill 2010-32 that was passed last year to encourage all stakeholders to contribute comments about the current standards by emailing the department at any time during the revision process. And that email is COSTAND. It's Colorado Standards Revision at cde.state.colorado.us. So I would encourage everybody to weigh in on your thoughts as they revise those standards. And with that, I thank you, and I look forward to a great year.
Good evening. Before I forget, I just want to acknowledge that two of my family members were just here, and so we don't often have a chance to publicly thank our families, but as board members, we know the time we put in, and so I think that they had to exit to do another family activity, but I know that they in large part were here because my son is a graduate of Lewis Palmer High School, and he very much valued the mentorship of Mrs. O'Connor. So just one more nod to you in terms of your honor this evening. And it actually provides, they didn't realize this, and I didn't even know they were coming tonight, but they just provided an excellent segue for me because I wanted to make a board comment on connections, something I've been thinking about the last few months, and especially since we had our offsite on Friday. And I recently read that we are hardwired for connection. We are hardwired for connection. And the past year has illustrated just how vital many of those connections are, especially for our young people. And given that, I'd like to highlight a community event that is focused precisely on connecting people in meaningful ways and toward the end all of creating an environment where our students can thrive. And that is an event coming up this Sunday. The Social Emotional Wellness Coalition of the Tri-Lakes area is holding a launch event for their year. They have titled their year the Year of the Story. It is this Sunday, August 22nd from 4 to 7 p.m. at Limbach Park. It is open to the public, and it will highlight student voices and experiences here in Lewis Palmer School District 38 with the hope that opening conversations, creating more space for listening, and valuing varied experiences will ultimately lead to more connection, greater understanding, and more clarity on what has worked well for our students in this community, and where there also may be opportunity for additional learning and experience. Everyone is invited, and it is partnered with Pikes Peak Suicide Prevention, NAMI, the Chamber of Commerce, local businesses, and actually a number of other entities which I didn't pull up. Students and families alike are all welcome. There will be some student activities that we hope our young people will enjoy. I'm grateful that we live in a community that values the overall health of each and every student. I appreciate the effort that is being invested in the social-emotional learning component of education here. And we have much to be grateful for, and I, as one board member, look forward to the year ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. So, thank you, Tiffany. I concur with both of your comments and the excitement of the new year. I really like those comments about connections because that is core to our health, is good connections. So thank you very much. You may have kind of taken from some of the comments so far that we had an offsite with Dr. Summers and his administration last Friday, and I thought it was excellent because we made some real connections. And if you guys don't mind, would you just stand? Let's start with Amber. Amber is, Dr. Summers, you're going to have to help me with their titles because I'm not exactly sure. I know what she does, but I'm not sure what her title is.
Amber's our new assistant superintendent.
Excellent, excellent. So next is Kristen.
Kristen Stieber is our chief of human resources.
Awesome. And Kitty.
Kitty Overton, chief financial officer.
And Mark.
Mark Belcher, director of communication.
And
atop.
And Rick, our veteran.
Rick Frampton, executive director of student services.
Perfect. I wanted to take a moment just to acknowledge you because in our offsite, we talked a lot about a long-range comprehensive strategic plan, which we've now been working on for going on 2 years. And one of the things that we want to do is to ensure that our community has a chance to participate in how do we govern, I guess, is how do we govern that policy or that long-range strategic plan. So we think of policy, and I appreciate public comments tonight that actually referred to policy because policy is the guiding principles that drive the behavior within our school system. And so our administration, under the guidance of Dr. Summers, will be focusing on different aspects of policy as it relates to the strategic plan and ensuring that our current policies are up to speed with that long-range comprehensive strategic plan for our school district. Those guiding principles or policies is where we want public feedback. Now, we will have policy review, and our current process is we have a first reading, and then we'll have a second reading before we vote on any changes to the policy. I encourage public review and comment and participation in that process. It's important to us all that we represent through our guiding principles or policies the values of our community so that our school system becomes what we want it to be as a community. Besides it just being the best in the world, I mean, right? We want it to be a reflection of our values. So, having said that, I also just want to express the reflection I've had these past few days of elementary children going to school. Some first grade, it's not their first time at school, but first grade for them is a big deal. And then I saw another little sign that a student had, first time second grader. And I just have to say, that really touches me a lot when I see kids and their excitement to go into the classroom, to meet their friends, to meet their teachers. It's a new year. And new beginnings is such a good thing. I personally have a junior and a senior who went to school today, got their IDs, and looked at their schedules and met with some friends, and they seem to have just as much excitement as the elementary kids. So I have, as a member of the board, the same kind of excitement about the board meeting. This is the first one of this school year. I think this is my 4th year on the board, and I feel as energetic and as optimistic as I ever have. And I think, the work that Casey and his administration did during the pandemic was amazing, number one. And number two is the board was able to work with Casey and the administration to actually accomplish more progress on our long-range strategic plan. And we could have just said, oh, let's just put everything off, but we didn't. So we continue to make progress even or in spite of the pandemic. I wished that it was over, and unfortunately it's not. I encourage everyone, particularly families, to make those choices that they have to make to protect the health of their family. The administration of the school district has in place the same guidelines we were following all last year, which is the El Paso County Health and the Colorado Department of Health guidelines. They're ever changing. Throughout the year, I can't even remember if we ever had 2 months of consistency. They just change constantly, which is to be expected. The point I'm making is this: we may have to change again. And as we do, the agility that the school system has already demonstrated in adapting to that change has been demonstrated. They will continue to follow public health guidelines. And at the same time, try and keep our schools open for our children. So, I commend Rick Frampton, because I know he was central at the help. And Dr. Summers, as always, I appreciate your leadership. And we're grateful. I personally am grateful to have a superintendent that is able to communicate well. You've got a new staff. I'll try and be patient as we kind of go through this transition period with new people doing presentations and wanting those presentations to kind of look similar to what we are used to, but knowing there's a learning curve for each one of you. And I'm grateful for all of you being here and supporting Dr. Summers. And with that, I'll turn the time to you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Thank you, all board members, for your comments this evening, as well as our public comments earlier. So I'm going to just keep my comments somewhat brief. Did not prepare a formal presentation with slides, but I think the starting point is we love hearing the excitement, the energy, the enthusiasm, and we're very excited to welcome everyone back, or welcome everybody new into our district for the upcoming 21-22 school year. Certainly, we hope that our staff had a restful and relaxing summer. While I appreciate all of the positive commentary, we could not have done it without the entire team and all of our staff members who worked tirelessly through all of the ever-changing processes as we went through last year. I don't want to necessarily flash back to all of that, because I think we're all hoping for and aiming for something much more sustainable as we move into this upcoming year. It's been really good to welcome many of our staff members back. I just want to highlight a few things so that you have some context, because we get to this point in the summer, which I don't even know that we could use the term summer anymore, but we really started, our team's work started early July, and we were very excited to welcome all of our principals back and had a wonderful professional learning experience together up at the CASE conference, which we mentioned earlier. That was kind of our first time together as a brand new team, district leadership team, including all of our executive leaders as well as our principals. We followed that with an extended leadership team experience the week of August 2nd, and that was an opportunity to be with our assistant principals, our instructional coaches, learning services, student services teams. And we look at very closely the continuum of all of our students from the preschool, early childhood realm all the way through into the secondary level and beyond. And we're talking a lot about every student every day, what our vision is, and how we're committing to preparing every student for future life success, whether that be via college, career, just general life experience, and making sure that our kids are leaving very capable and competent for whatever comes next. We had an excellent new teacher orientation facilitated by multiple team members. So we were really excited to have all of our new teachers with us for a couple of days at Palmer Ridge High School. And then we were able to welcome all of our teachers and many of our support staff back to their schools, their sites, just a few days ago on August 11th. So again, we're just thrilled about welcoming everybody on board. Mr. Taylor, you already did a little bit of a profile of all of our executive leadership team. One individual you did not have the chance to meet, we hired him over the summer, is Mark. Mark is running our live streaming right now and doing a great job, just nestling right in. He's coming to us from UCCS, where he was in their communications team for several years and has background in news media and is really coming right along and being an excellent addition, in addition to the rest of our executive leaders. So we have been on a roadshow, and I thought a little bit about maybe doing one more roadshow experience, but I thought better, but our team is already a little bit road showy out. But really where we're going in that process, number one, is introducing us and a little bit about who we are, and more importantly, getting to the core of how we are championing our strategic plan this year. So we do have 5 priorities. And those priorities we are going to deep dive and we're going to look closely at every month over the course of the next 5 months, and then we'll repeat that same process going into the second half of the year. So we're excited tonight to dig a little bit deeper into priority 1, cultivating safe, healthy, and welcoming schools. And Mr. Rick Frampton will be facilitating that process. So I'm going to let that presentation do a lot of the talking when we get to it. And that will also include some COVID-related updates based on where we are at this point in time, as has been alluded to. So again, just really looking forward to the year ahead. Thank you again, Board, for your service, your volunteering, all of the time that you put into this. It means a lot to every student, every stakeholder in our system, and looking forward to, again, moving forward with purpose and with passion and with an eye toward every student every day. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Summers. Our next agenda item is C1, Schneider Electric Update. And we have William Benish, the Program Manager, and Robert Davidson, the Project Development Manager from Schneider Electric to provide their presentation on an update of a contract that was approved back in June. Welcome.
Good evening. It's wonderful to see you all, -2. I hope you all have a wonderful summer, and thank you for letting Robert and I come in, and thank you to Dr. Summers for giving us the time to be able to provide a progress update for the board on how construction has gone this summer, specifically with the security vestibules. So I will open my presentation here. Go to slideshow mode. Make sure this works. Yep, perfect. So if you do recall from earlier this spring, if there are any questions that come up during the presentation, feel free to stop us. We want to make sure this time is utilized as best as possible, make sure we can answer all questions for the board, especially as we move forward in continuing the remainder of our scope of work for our capital recovery project for the Lewis Palmer School District. Pretty exciting. As we have here on our title slide, our photo right here on the left is our storefront entrance vestibule being built over the summer throughout most of July. And actually, Robert and I, a little bit earlier, about an hour and a half ago, stopped by Lewis Palmer Elementary and take a look at the beautiful red awning that's now on the top of there. And seeing that process wrap up is really exciting. And on the right side there, you see Dr. Silvers and I met up at the CASE conference a few weeks back. We have a banner stand with some information on Lewis Palmer that I'll actually be providing for the district shortly sometime in the following weeks. But getting into the conversation in a brief agenda as we have presented in the past, going to take a look at a timeline of events since the project approval back in June, and some progress photos and before-afters at each of the 3 schools that have security vestibule installations. We'll then be wrapping up with discussing the remaining scope of work, a brief marketing communications update. I'm glad Mark is here. I'll go introduce myself to him after this, and then wrap up with a construction timeline moving forward. I also saw Dr. Somers' quote on the school's Instagram this morning. I thought it was wonderful. I wanted to include it in there. Good job. So let's get right into it. So we had our project approval set on June 14th of 2021, and we moved right into things. 4 days later with our construction kickoff meeting. Our constructor, John Stancliffe, has been really leading the charge this summer and getting all of the work taken care of. Robert and I have really been impressed with the work that he's done, especially working alongside Leo, Dennis, and Bob throughout the summer. So we really appreciate this work, and I wanted to give him a little shout out there. Security vestibules breaking ground. So really a week after the project was approved, beginning that process, getting all the foundations set at all 3 sites, being at Bear Creek, Prairie Winds, and Lewis Palmer Elementary. Throughout the following close to 2 months or so, those vestibules are just about near completion. And here we have on August 17th, even today and sometime tomorrow, we're going to have continued work to continue as that process moves forward. So we'll share some before and after photos, as well as touch base on a few other items. I will say I have here the physical vestibules and walls are complete. We'll show those photos. There are some items that do need to get wrapped up. Just cleaning up some of the schools with finishing up some of the caulking work that needs to be done. The glass actually does need to be replaced. With the 3 vestibules, that work will get done over the next month or so. It'll be done at night. It won't be interrupting the educational process. Students and teachers will not be noticing the change. It'll look like nothing really happened there. We're just changing the actual glass that's being put in there with the glass that was required in the original design of the process. So we've communicated directly with the security contractor on that. But regarding the actual vestibules, they are put up. The functionality is there. They do look beautiful. We're excited for the school year to begin with them. And yeah, you'll see some photos here on that. Yes.
Which glass? The vestibules themselves or the original?
So the vestibules that were installed, they were installed with a tempered glass, and they need to be replaced with a laminate glass that has that film that we were discussing throughout the spring that would increase that level.
Effectively, the fabricator made an error in the glass selection that has been identified. It will be rectified.
It would be rectified. Okay.
Absolutely.
But no cost to the district.
Correct.
No cost to the district. Absolutely. So let's get into some progress photos. This is my favorite part. Starting with Prairie Winds, and I apologize to the folks in the crowd if it's a little small to see there, but if you haven't been over at that school yet, you'll see this beautiful structure that has been erected right at the main building entrance there, standing next to the blue pole. So really, of course, a drastic difference to the before and after, where visitors will be entering on the left side entrance and staff will be entering on the right side from the vestibule as well. Also at Prairie Winds, if you'll walk through the main corridor there and you enter to the left to where the main classroom wing entrance is, you'll of course see that hall is now covered and blocked out, so there is that additional wall that has been constructed and erected for that classroom wing entrance as well. Here over at Bear Creek on the left side, this was during the spring when we took our original photos of that main reception area. Now that another structure has been erected there on the after where it's covering the reception area, so all, again, visitors will be entering on the left side. One more angle of that just to show really where the entrance is. And you will notice as that second door there is a gap at the top there. One of the items that will be added on over the next few weeks is getting I believe, a polycarbonate glass covering. So that entire covering up top will be covered, of course, preventing any sort of measures on that front. And we've communicated with Dennis, Leo, and the school principal on that as well. Lewis Palmer Elementary, my favorite one. So we have built out here the beautiful storefront entrance with the red awning. It looks wonderful. We actually just saw the principal outside. She was pulling weeds out of the ground, making sure her grounds looked beautiful outside there. It was wonderful to see and how excited she was to start the school year. But as you can see here, that entrance is fully covered and that vestibule is truly built in. Now, the process remaining is cleaning up that area and making sure that it's ready for students. Here's another angle from the left side facing and the right side facing. And I believe the PDF that might have been sent has a few slight different photos, and I'll be sure to send the more updated version. I believe Vicki and I were communicating on that front. Continuing at Lewis Palmer Elementary, if you recall, not just the entrance vestibules, but also for the interior walls inside the school as well. Robert, you haven't been talking that much. Would you like to jump in and talk about the interior walls? Because my voice is getting around.
Sure, yeah. At Lewis Palmer Elementary School, several of the interior hallways did not have the final classroom at the end fully walled in, the ability to close the door and have that kind of security in the classroom. So you can see here some pictures of the progress and the implementation process of closing those walls in, and they're all wrapped up. Walls are in now, doors are in. Some additional pictures with it.
So the after photos here really showing those walls are up, fully covered up. They are complete. Just now cleaning up that process, making sure it's ready for students to enter in. So that is the final amount of the vestibule work is complete. It is excited. Of course, those small items will be taken care of. We'll be able to provide Dr. Somers and his team a final timeline for when the remainder of that work should be taken care of. Again, we're expecting over the next month or so for that work to be done. Any questions on the progress photos? And I want to, again, once more commend Dr. Somers. We had a conversation last week. It's wonderful to see in 2 short months this work being done. We're proud of the team that has been working so hard day and night on this process, and we're excited to continue this work as we have quite a bit of remaining scope to continue. Any questions?
No questions. I just really appreciate the update.
Absolutely.
The update was really helpful. I just have a comment. I stopped by Lewis Palmer Elementary School today. I'm no longer an LPS mom, but I guess I just can't get enough of it. Actually, I had to pick up a clarinet, and the vestibule was in. It was interesting to see. It was new, and it was cool, and I think it'll do a great job of its intended purpose. So thank you.
Absolutely. And if I didn't mention it earlier, I do want to commend specifically Dennis Coates and Leo Poirier for their hard work every single week, being on the phone with our team, the security contractors. They have been so accessible and helpful. So thank you again for here. Okay. So let's jump into the remaining scope of work. Actually, Robert, did you want to touch on this process?
Yeah, so our big focus this summer was to get those vestibules installed before the kids came back. We're excited to have those walls and doors there, and all the structures there, and kids can pass through them as expected and not interfere with the use of the building. But the remainder of the work is basically everything else: all the lighting, the water, the plug-in controls, the HVAC replacements, the HVAC controls. All the rest of that scope is there because the focus this summer was on the vestibules.
So you can see really the majority, only 2 line items were taken out, and that was the security vestibules and the walls there. So we'll share the remaining timeline at a very high level in a few slides for what that will look like. Moving past that, if you recall from our presentations earlier in the spring, a big focus of ours being on the marketing and communication side. So you'll see some of the similar items that we shared, and I'm going to actually share a few examples on the next few slides discussing how that marketing plan has already begun. But once school does begin during the school year, parents are dropping off students. They're going to want to understand where is all this change coming from, especially once we move past the vestibules, but move into some of the lighting work that's going to happen, the mechanical work, as well on the automation side. So we'll be working with the district as well as the new communications leader on putting together successful signage across several of the campuses that will be, again, attesting to the strategic vision of the district and what the project is accomplishing. That post-project video, as we discussed back in the spring, will be completed next summer once the remaining scope of work is complete. So you'll already getting an idea of when we should be completing the remainder of that scope. So a little while out from now, but wanted to just retouch on it. On the social media end, I'll share a few screenshots that I took. But besides some of the typical platforms like LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook, our team is also in the process of creating a more formal press release for Lewis Palmer School District. We've been communicating with Dr. Somers on what that would look like, and I'll be communicating with the communications director as well as we start the school year and how that associates itself with the project objectives. The article in the Tribune, Progress Through the Pandemic, I thought it was wonderfully written, and it really attests to all the great work that was done last year and how that moves forward into this year as well. And I know that all board members were associated with that description and writing. Lastly, district events. We touched on it briefly during the spring, but our Students in STEAM event, it's underway, it's up and running. We're planning right now for an early October. If you recall, this is an event where we're hoping to get Lewis Palmer as really the main sponsored district, as well as several other districts in El Paso County to teach the importance of STEAM and STEM learning experiences, have speakers come in. Right now we're planned on hosting that at actually the Discovery Center in Colorado Springs. So coordination for that event is underway. We've been working with Jess McAllister over at the district CTE program. She's been fantastic in connecting us with other folks to get in contact with. But an exciting event that we're hoping Lewis Palmer is really part of the face for. So something that we will be providing another update on very soon.
Do we have a date set for
I
that?
believe October 8th, but it's tentative, so I'll give you a more confident one. But for now,
Sure.
it's October 8th. Yes. So just a screenshot. If you haven't been able to jump on the district's website, I want to commend Rachel Wardwell for doing a wonderful job working with her and her team on putting together a partnership webpage on the district's website, going through the process of developing this partnership with Lewis Palmer School District, sharing the resources and documents to make sure that the community, staff, and faculty understand exactly what's involved in this comprehensive scope of work. It's wonderfully done, and we will be continuously updating it with photos, any sort of presentations like this one today, and any other necessary information that's requested for that webpage. I believe it's under the community tab on the district's webpage there. So wonderful job. Check her on that. Oh, too far. Alongside that, just a few screenshots of some district partnership social media content. As I mentioned a few earlier, we'll continue to be providing those. So construction timeline moving forward. Again, like I mentioned, the vestibule and wall installation wrapping up as the summer is wrapping up as we enter into the fall. Actually, Robert, would you like to touch on this?
Sure, yeah. I can just do this. It's all good. We're just going to show the full slide there. Yeah, so we are moving into the next phase of development, which means finalizing our automation engineering. We're having folks on site next week to go lift up ceiling panels and work out the final minutia for the engineering design and building automation system. Our mechanical installation was originally intended to work almost exclusively next year in the spring. Most of the work has to be done on heating systems, and as you know, in Colorado, the heating season starts early. So our plan was to really get that done as soon as the weather was warm enough in the spring of 2022. However, we're going to pull a little bit of that ahead. The boiler at Lewis Palmer Middle School is it's on its last legs. We want to make sure it is replaced in as timely fashion as possible. We've already ordered the boiler itself, and we're hoping to get that done earlier rather than later in the schedule. But then really the building automation system installation itself will happen more in the spring as well, because you can't take those systems down in the heart of the heating system. And at the same time, we'll have the lighting and the water, the plug loop controls, all that stuff done starting in spring 2022, finishing up in summer 2022. And of course, all done without interrupting students. So we're excited about the schedule and the next steps forward with implementation, with the next phase of the project, the long-term savings delivery, the construction closeout, the start of the measurement verification process at the end of summer 2022.
Start to see those savings. One other piece I didn't mention earlier on the marketing communications, if you recall from, I believe, maybe our second presentation to the board, we spent some time speaking with several stakeholders across the district about how they feel is this investment of interested in deferred maintenance and upgrades to the security vestibules. Is it worth the investment for the district to consider it? And we received a lot of feedback, and we shared that with the board. We will be going back to those stakeholders, and we plan on doing that as the construction progress is wrapping up, and asking them, do you feel like the difference has been made, provide us that feedback, because it is so important. We want to ensure your voice is being heard. Again, in hope of helping achieve several goals within the district's strategic vision. Any questions on the construction timeline moving forward?
The only question I have is, has there been anything at all that has caused any delay? Or are you pretty much on track?
I was going to say, so the boilers, we would have loved to have gotten them started earlier. Material delays in the construction world right now are crazy, so we would have loved. On June 14th, Leo said, hey, I'm worried about the boiler, can we get that going sooner? But of course, delays in lead times for equipment have made that a little bit more difficult. The only other thing I would say that's been a delay has been with the glass itself, right? The error in the fabrication that Will mentioned that we'll be addressing is set us back a little bit, because we would love to not have to do that, right? We'd love it to already be in place right now fully, but that's the only substantive delay thus far.
I would also mention we did think about that on the lighting end, where a lot of the lighting has been procured early and will be stored in the basement of Bear Creek. So once we do get to that work, as it is a huge savings piece, it should already be here with the district. We won't be procuring it at the time, and that work should start. So we're trying to think ahead with anything that might happen.
We've identified some of the supply chain challenges
Yes.
for raw materials, and to prevent any sort of schedule slipping in the spring, we've already pre-procured the materials for the lighting, so that won't be an issue.
Is it fair to say that most of the lighting savings would occur during the winter months? So we wouldn't really see majority of those savings until the following winter, since they're being installed in the spring?
So the lighting savings will be heavily generated during the periods of greatest occupancy. So not winter in the seasonal sense, but winter in the non-summer break sense, if that makes sense. So during the school year.
So there will still be savings. They're all installed in the early spring. Between early spring and the end of the academic year is when we see the initial savings.
Yes, that's correct. Absolutely. During those construction periods at year zero, those wonderful cash flows we shared back in the spring.
Right. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I might have missed it, I apologize. And when you touched on the boilers, I was about to ask on that. On the timeline, where are the boilers in the timeline?
So they're in that winter 2022 installation piece for mechanical solutions,
Mechanical.
but the hope is more like fall.
Okay, thanks.
Fall.
I have one last question. That is, I just don't remember the impact this might have on the air quality inside of our buildings. Can you address, what all of this work, when it's done, what impact it has on the internal air quality of our buildings?
Yeah, so a good example of the improvements that are going to happen in indoor air quality are at Lewis Palmer High School. Some of the relief fans that provide proper building pressurization and ventilation were at the end of their useful life and were really struggling to provide a comfortable space. Those are all getting replaced on the older side of that building. We're addressing some economizer, making sure that the maximum amount of fresh air can be brought into the buildings without having negative effects on comfort.
In all buildings?
In particular, Lewis Palmer High School, but in all of the buildings, we're putting in brand new building automation systems and controls to make sure that everything functions the way that it's supposed to. So any air dampers that have failed over the years will be part of the commissioning process, right? When we install the controls to make sure they operate correctly, we'll diagnose any of those deficiencies and remedy them so that the air is able to flow through in the maximum ventilation, that kind of the design level of fresh air is brought into the spaces as effectively as possible with the given infrastructure. So we're really trying to make the most of what's there everywhere, and in some places we're improving the equipment to substantially improve it where stuff was at the end of its useful life, and it made a lot of sense to make a change.
Thank you.
That brought up another question. With the automation of those systems and the upgrade of those systems, does that require any new training by our staff, for our staff?
So it will include some training, and it's part of the project.
Okay.
So we worked with Leo and team before we selected the final product for this, and he's very comfortable with the approach, and I think it's a very user-friendly approach. Previously, the district had 4 different platforms that they were operating. We're consolidating it down to 2 in the project, so really it should be a net benefit from a training standpoint with Walter Hall.
Dr. Summers? Yeah.
Just, pardon me? Just
Echoing what you've already heard and what you're seeing through this presentation, the efficiency, the diligence, I'd also go so far as to say customer service around all of this. We just are grateful for our partnership and looking forward to all the next steps in front of us.
Excellent. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item is board priority number 1 update. I believe Rick is going to lead us through this. And before Rick gets started on that, Dr. Summers, could you help us bridge the our strategic plan had this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is that what the priority number means? Is that what it aligns to?
Yes, so what you will see as follows is a focus on priority 1, cultivating safe, healthy, and welcoming schools. And I should have also made the connection. Our update from our Schneider team was really a deeper dive into where we're at with our investments into a more physically secure campus. So Rick and Dennis are going to touch a little bit, thank you for also being here, Dennis, are going to touch a little bit more on some of the other components that fall under that overarching priority number 1. So we're looking forward to them walking us through this.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. It's actually quite nice being able to represent Priority 1 when we have such an efficient and capable group like Schneider Electric. It makes us champions of Priority 1 look good, so thank you for that. And we'll start with the number 1 key initiative under the priority of cultivating a safe, healthy, and welcoming schools, starting with safe. And we just heard where we're at with the building security upgrades and the improved secure school features for all students and staff, so that feels really good. One thing we did on August 4th is we've had an opportunity to train all of our district administrators, principals, assistant principals, and instructional coaches on crisis response and preparedness training. Mr. Coates here took the lead on that training, so anything you want to add to that training that?
No, I think a lot of our staff had already been through it, but it was some reminders. You know, there's such a broad range between, when they enroll in preschool, when they're in, whether it be a senior or in transitions or whatever it is. Sometimes we've had some changes in levels, so it was just a good reminder, and we have a really good team. Very confident going into the year.
At that same time, we did attendance and restorative discipline practices. We're looking at how we're implementing our discipline and attendance with kids who are struggling in school and coming up with ways that are going to be preventative in nature and helping kids learn from mistakes that they might make and move forward accordingly. And we're also focusing on social and emotional learning supports in partnership with parents and families. We have a safety security team that's returning in almost its entirety. You want to introduce that?
It is.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but Teresa mentioned this community group that focuses on social and emotional learning. Is there a connection here? I assume there is, but I just want to ask.
Yes, there is. Bridget O'Connor, who was here earlier, is on the board for the Social Emotional Wellness Coalition. I attend those meetings, and we're active participants in their meetings, and we collaborate very closely with them.
And Teresa, are you on that committee as well?
I do attend those meetings. I'm not on the steering committee.
Okay.
I think it's pretty in our presentation when I talk about that too.
Thank you.
I just wanted to, there's only one new name on that board, but these guys have been hard at work, including not just since they've come back in the last couple of weeks, but with my team, with over that, besides that over 120 years of law enforcement experience, they've attended FBI training over the summer. We've trained with the El Paso County Sheriff's Office. We've done training with Monument Police Department, and that was on their own dime and their own time. So I want to give that's a great group of guys, and we're very fortunate to have that. We do have a new SRO for those of you, Chad. Deputy Wheat's been at Lewis Palmer going into his second year, and Deputy Atkinson will be first year with District 38 at Palmer Ridge, but he has been an SRO for several years in District 49.
And of note, I believe both of those are D38 graduates, is that correct?
That is, and I didn't even know that until recently. I believe it was kind of unique because it surprised me when I heard Deputy Atkinson talking about graduating with Mrs. O'Connor's brother. So as soon as I heard that, I hadn't met him yet, but as soon as I heard that, I knew that he would have a tie and this would be more than just a job to him. So that's awesome.
And if I may just add some context based on what you just asked Mr. Taylor a few minutes ago, but because Mr. Schwartz and I are also associated with this Goal 1, and in previous conversations over the last couple of years, much like the social emotional wellness components of the community collaborate with the school district, our local Monument Police, can you list off some of the organizations that collaborate with you in terms of keeping our kids safe?
Oh, there's every Department of Human Services. We did, I was fortunate enough to be asked to speak at an SRO training this summer, so dealing with Fountain Police Department, Pueblo Sheriff's Office, I believe Manitou Springs. We were all collaborative, and we had people from Pueblo and El Paso County mental health services that were there providing recommendations and contacts, and making sure that if there are situations that are above, outside the parents want, then it doesn't have to necessarily always happen in our walls, and making sure that our families have the information that they need to help outside our walls also.
So that safety and security is multifaceted, multi-layered across the district with the intent of keeping all the kids as safe.
Absolutely.
In our introduction, we already touched on the administrative training that happened on August 4th. One thing we didn't talk about in specificity is a complete suicide and risk assessment as well as threat assessment. That combined with crisis response is a real comprehensive training for our administrators on how to identify students who might have additional needs and need support. We're definitely taking a proactive approach to this. One of the most important things we as school providers can do for students is develop relationships with them, understand who they are as people, and know what their day-to-day activities look like. So when something's not right, something's off, we can easily pick up on that because we know those students well, and we can address that very early on. So we're working with all of our staff to understand how important those relationships are, and then also provide any interventions that are necessary. So if a staff member does identify something of concern, they have multiple resources in which they can access for students.
So I shared this with, obviously I shared this, and I'm not going to go into details during our retreat, but that relationship is so key. And I personally have that experience of knowing that. But this also does include partnership with parents and involving the parents in this as well, correct?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. We want to be able to communicate any concerns we have with them. We want to have an open door for them to communicate if something's going on at home that we need to be aware of, so we can support the students through that. Not only academically, but through the whole child approach. So that's essential. And by the way, academics too. One of the things we found is that if the students, if their pet dog died the night before a big test, that's important for us to know. Those are important dynamics that we can adjust and adapt and individualize for, so students can then thrive and move forward academically as well. So that's a two-way street, that communication.
Is there a procedure in place to ensure that parents are being included and involved in that?
When you say procedure, I think we're taking numerous steps to develop those relationships with parents, whether it be back to school, like parent conferences, regular communication between the teacher and parents. And hopefully our community is seeing that on a regular basis in all of our schools with all of our kids in grade levels. So that's the first step in making sure that we have those contacts with.
And also, I would hope that, if we're building those relationships, we're also building that relationship in the family also. So by no means would we expect it to be a surprise. And there are multiple times when the parents have asked us to take it a step beyond what they feel comfortable doing. So it would, the parents would definitely play a part. And just if I can retouch to go back to in the crisis response, just along with the vestibules, is the grant, the Safer Schools grant that we got is amping up, and I've had several meetings with them too, and we don't have an exact timeline of when that goes on, but we will be the first school district in El Paso County that will have that instant access to. We've talked about preventative measures in the case where it was active. We would have we would be the only school in El Paso County that would have direct communication with responding officers. So we can update that as we get ready to go live, but that's moving forward pretty rapidly.
When do you think it'll go live?
Best case scenario, October-ish, probably more realistic. It isn't any kind of a holdup isn't on our end. It's the sheriff's office has to get everybody trained in order, every deputy, every dispatcher. So it's more on their end right now. But we're ready to go.
This school year?
Yes, sir.
Good.
Another step we're going to take in ensuring that our social emotional wellness and curriculum learning is in place is we're going to be asking students and staff some perception surveys. We're going to be asking questions about school culture and climate. And we're going to use that information on a couple different levels. The first of which is we're going to take a look at how effective we are at meeting the needs of kids. We're going to ask the question in the fall. We'll ask those questions again in the spring. And what we're looking for is some objective measures in which we can determine growth and success in our ability to meet the kids' social and emotional needs as well as their academic needs. We're going to ask the staff some of the same questions about school culture and climate, just to make sure that we have all those perceptions available to us. And what we're hoping to do is identify those schools that are doing it exceptionally well and have really strong responses in culture and climate, and try to identify which factors are successful so we can broaden those outside of that individual school across the district. And if we also identify some gaps that need to be addressed, we can be aware of that quickly and move on that. The second aspect of the student surveys is if there is some unique needs that are coming out, we can respond very quickly and identify students who might need additional resources or support. Yep.
Parental, and there will still be parental oversight with this, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be able to share the results with parents. This is different. This is different than the Safe School questionnaire that we've been asked to participate in at the state level. We were actually asked to do that questionnaire for this year, and we've declined. This is a survey that we have full control over. This is a survey that's more about school climate and addressing school climate issues and how students are feeling about connecting with adults and the climate of their classroom. If parents want to see the questions, we'll make those available to them. If they want to see the results, we can make that available to them. And if there's any discomfort in having their students participate or children participate, as we can make sure they can take the questionnaires as well. Any other questions? Okay. I hope this last slide is around COVID safety protocols. I hope this is the last time we ever have to talk about this in this meeting. But I just want to point out that we have been following both Colorado Department of Health and Environment and El Paso County Public Health's requirements and guidelines very closely. We're noticing they're changing about every other week. So we had an update on the 3rd of August and then another one on the 15th of August. So they're definitely coming out at a fairly quick pace. As of right now, regarding mask requirements, the Public Health Order 2038 is saying they are not required. So Lewis Public School District is not requiring masks, but we are encouraging them for all students, staff, and visitors inside school buildings. They are required on buses per federal law. The CDC has offered an order in which we must follow that for all public transportation. The masks are required. And one of our goals and one of our primary focuses is we want to provide a supportive and welcoming environment for any student who chooses to wear a mask or chooses not to wear a mask. And that's a focus of ours, is to not set folks apart or have students feel like they're uncomfortable if wearing a mask is a choice they make, and vice versa, where if a child chooses not to wear a mask, they're not in an environment where they feel pressure to do so. If a student does test positive, or staff or anybody else in our schools, we are still going to follow the guidelines in which there's a 10-day isolation period required for anybody who tests positive. Our mantra for this school year is we want those who are sick to stay home and those who are well to stay in school. And that's the next piece to this, which is quarantine practices. We want to keep our well students in school to the greatest extent possible. So we will continue to contact trace. A close contact is considered a person who is in the vicinity of 3 feet or less for more than 15 minutes of a COVID positive individual. But we are not, as a school district, going to be doing the quarantines and isolation. If there's a need for a quarantine, we'll be working closely with the El Paso County Department of Public Health, and they will actually be doing the quarantine on our behalf when it's necessary. So we're going to be working much closer with them than what we did in the past year. The intent really is to keep kids spaced out beyond that 3-foot radius, so even when a sick COVID positive person is in our schools, the impact on quarantine is reduced to the greatest extent possible. Therefore, we're keeping more kids in school.
Is there still a guideline with regard to number of cases that define an outbreak?
Yeah, there is.
What is that right now?
It's 5. So if you have 5 or more students within a class or a cohort, that would be considered and defined as an outbreak. And that's up from last year, which is very nice. I think that's going to be very helpful for us, so we're not defining outbreaks quite as quickly. One thing we are going to be doing is tracking very closely, though. If we do know, if we are notified of a positive case in any of our classrooms or schools, and we identify additional cases, we will work closely with the health department to identify an appropriate response to that to try to mitigate any spread.
As well as encouraging masks for the El Paso County Health Order. Are you also, are we maintaining distance, or what are the distance protocols in the classrooms right now?
3 feet is the distance that would be considered a close contact. So we're taking as many preventative measures as we can to keep that 3-foot distance, to follow that to the greatest extent possible. We're very pleased because last year it was 6 feet, and 6 feet distance is almost impossible to maintain in a classroom setting. But 3 feet is much easier to manage.
Can you speak to how you guide each of the schools physically? I mean, is it the principal or the nurse, or how is it that these ever-changing rules are, communicated and administered in all the different sites?
Well, we have regular meetings with our principals, and oftentimes, well, I can say every single agenda item for the last year and a half, this has been at the forefront of our agenda. So these conversations are occurring regularly. It gives our principals an opportunity to share feedback with us to make sure we have a finger on the pulse of what's happening in each of our schools. I meet with our nurses regularly. The nurses are part of the student support team, and I'm meeting with them quite frequently. Last year was weekly at times. I've already met with them this school year in preparation, so they're fully aware of the guidelines and practices, as are the principals. And it's moving from the principal and faculty meetings down into the buildings that way.
And then, perhaps conversely, how often do you meet with El Paso Public Health? Is it monthly or weekly, or just?
Right now, they have a coordinator meeting. It's every other week right now on Friday. So that's been the pace in which they're going to continue until there's a change of need. And if they need to have it more frequently, they'll schedule it more frequently. And if we see things settle down, they can move them out. So it's scheduled every other week right now.
The other thing that corresponds to that is monthly, sometimes twice a month meetings with other superintendents from other districts. So we often are sharing with each other where we currently are in relationship to adherence to guidelines and different protocols that are being implemented across the area. So while we aren't necessarily always lockstep and key, generally speaking, we're pretty much in alignment with how we're making sense of all of that.
And that meeting's just the school superintendent, just not with public health, or is it?
Public health are regular participants in that meeting, so we do request, in addition to the public health employees themselves, we often have El Paso County Attorney Diana May on those calls. Oftentimes we have Susan Whelan, who is the Director of Public Health in El Paso County, and other school-based representatives that work really closely with us. So that has been something that I don't know that it will be as regular as we had it last year, but anytime we need some additional clarification, we're usually able to request that and keep those communication channels going.
So, Dr. Summers, just let me ask this question, because all school districts didn't respond the same last year. I don't anticipate that they necessarily would respond identically this year.
Mm-hmm.
So the purpose of this meeting is?
To make sure that we are aware of any changes that are being made at the El Paso County Health Hub. I can tell you just in the past 2 weeks, the initial guidelines that we received early August were modified 2 or 3 different times that we just received again this past Friday. So it's an opportunity, if nothing else, to make sure that we are asking questions of our partners there. And secondly, while we aren't necessarily in a position where we are doing everything the same, it is really beneficial to hear the thinking and hear some of the different what's worked or what hasn't. There's been a couple of districts that have welcomed students back earlier. So it's always a point of note to say, well, how is whatever you're doing actually going? And you'd be surprised, even though on the surface there may be, general adherence to protocols. If you dig deeper, you get different interpretations, different nuances. So if nothing else, it just is, with 15 different districts, it's helpful to hear how different folks are approaching different needs that may be there, and understanding that we aren't all the same. That's not an expectation ever, but it's helpful to at least reference where we situate, because we're all dealing with similar things at the end of the day.
But all the school districts are following the CD, the AG, and El Paso County Health requirements?
The requirements are the non-negotiables. Within the guidance, there is certainly different room for interpretation, so our position continues to be working within those guidelines. But yes, certainly there will be some unique features of how we're interpreting and how we're implementing. But in terms of the actual requirements, we understand what the have-tos are.
And if you'll tell me once again, what's the instead of one team arts team, it's what again this year?
Every student, every day.
Every student, every day. So that's your guiding principle in this effort.
Coming back to what Rick mentioned at the beginning, keeping well students and staff at school, at work, and if they're sick, they need to get better. And I think the best way for us to combat the spread right now is to do the very best we can, and everybody has a part to play in keeping any illness away from our school buildings.
Chris, can I jump in? On an advocacy level, school directors, parents, educators, students have that freedom and should reach out and advocate to our Department of Health officials, Susan Whelan, for example. And they have their email addresses are on their website. So advocacy on behalf of your own students and our school districts also. I encourage everybody to do that.
Excellent. Anything else? Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Our next agenda item is financial planning and analysis with Kitty Overton. First time review.
Yeah, so you've all had a chance to look at the July financial reports that are in your board packet. Were there any questions or comments on those tonight?
Well, if you don't mind, I would like to focus. You have slides. Can you pull up the attendance, the district enrollment? I just want to make sure I'm understanding it properly. Thank you. So the columns under 20, 21, 22, there's two columns. The first one says previous year first day count. And then the second one says previous year October count. So to be clear, the first day count was around August, whatever that day was, and the October count is what drives our receipts. Right? So last year it was 6494 in October count, and I think on the far right hand, not farthest right, but the first yellow column on the right shows that this year we're up 217 students from the October count last year at 6702. Is that accurate?
These are the numbers as reported, and we're excited that they're going up.
Just a quick catch. I think change from last year on the first day, not the October count yet. So there's the 6702 to 6485. I was tracking very closely there, Mr. Taylor.
Yeah. So that would mean there was about, there's not that big difference, nine.
The only word of caution I would reference in relationship to this current report is we are still, and especially at this time of year, we see a lot of movement in and some movement out as we're nearing and as we're really the first couple of weeks of school. We don't really completely have a great sense of the official number until probably beginning of September because there are students that we just don't know yet, maybe who have moved. Several families will notify us. Sometimes we just don't know until we're looking at a roster and we expect a student to show up and they may not. The other thing is obviously we continue to have more and more students enrolling as we get closer to the beginning of the school year. So we've actually seen a very significant uptick in the past couple of weeks.
What day is our first day?
August 18th.
August 18th.
Wednesday.
This coming Wednesday. So we will have an update in the future that will have August 18th as our first day of school. The other question that I have is, what number do we have in the budget?
The budgeted number, that I have here, which includes Monument Academy and the transition program is 6274.
6274.
That was the number in the adopted
So we're over
budget.
400 students higher than what we saw in the budget.
Optimistic.
So, and I just want to check my math with yours, Kitty. The projection, yeah, you're right on with 6274. Obviously, that was based on a projection of 160 homeschool enrichment academy students. We are not really approaching that number at this point in time, so you see a delta there. And then when you break out half-day kindergarten slots, transitions program, as well as CPP or preschool, obviously we have to make sure we're tracking those closely because not all of those students are full-time funded students. So we just have to keep that FTE
It's a
student count
broad brush look right now.
in perspective. Thank you.
And then that actually raises two questions. So it's 400 students. Does that affect staffing? Are we going to be shorthanded for teachers in classrooms?
Well, we are short right now. That's partly due to the fact that we do not have all open positions full. So that's one variable. I can tell you that by and large, at least at the elementary level, we are mostly fully staffed in terms of classroom teachers being in a position to accommodate all of the students that are assigned to specific homerooms, if you will. We are still short some of our special education staff, including paraprofessionals. I think we are short at least a mental health professional, one, maybe two. And we are short right now in preschool. And we are short right now in world language at the high school level. And is there any others that I'm missing, Kristen, that you know off the top of your head? So it's been a hard hiring season from that standpoint. We also are still short a few positions in food service, transportation, and a few other support staff positions. So it is as challenging of a staffing year as I think we've experienced at the beginning of the year. And certainly we have more positions that we would love to be able to fill.
Yeah, it's one thing to have the extra receipts, but it's another to service kids first.
Indeed.
I would just add that I'm looking forward to, getting more visibility into our salary structure and finding, some standards there, if you will, so that we can actually do a real comparison with other districts, et cetera. So I'm excited about that work that we'll see in the future. I just wanted to touch base here with the fact that this is a double-edged sword. 400 extra students, there's a need to support that, regardless of whatever the PPOR is. All right. Any other questions on this, Tiffany?
Yeah, real quick, I'm missing something. Because I see 217 of the change versus 400. So.
No, that's coming from the budget. The
Oh,
budget is
gotcha.
on here. It's 274,
Right.
I think.
Oh.
6274, 79.
274. Yes.
Okay, following.
I was doing it in my head.
Gotcha.
Keeping in mind some of those students being Monument Academy, I can tell you in most places we were fairly on schedule with the general staffing allocations related to mostly elementary schools, for the most part middle. High schools a little bit trickier just in terms of how you count sections and where you're counting grade level distribution. As a whole, yes, we are up from where we were that change from last year. We are definitely already beginning to look closer at what we can anticipate in terms of increase in revenue and what implications that may have as that October count becomes more solidified. So I think those are conversations that we will look forward to having with you all as we get closer to that time.
So when school starts, I can look back at what last year showed, but are we seeing an increase in any particular grade level or building level?
So I think Bear Creek is the first that you're seeing there. Definitely we're projecting fewer kindergartners when we were in the spring. So coming in at 93, we did add a kindergarten section at Bear Creek. Lewis Palmer Elementary, pretty stable overall. Same with Palmer Lake. Prairie Winds and Kilmer. Middle, as I mentioned, there's just some natural fluctuation. And then you do see a lot of growth in the high school. So high school typically ends up, we receive both some intra-district appeals or transfers based on families making decisions as the spring and summer goes along. Maybe they had intended in being at one of the sites and then have requested to go elsewhere. So you're seeing fairly consistent numbers in terms of incoming freshmen across the board, and you can also see, some of those bigger classes, Palmer Ridge specifically, junior and senior year, definitely a few more students there compared to Lewis Palmer High School. So, it's all kind of a blend of different ways of looking at it, but something that we have a lot of conversations with each of the principals around these numbers and how we're tracking it to make sure that we are appropriately staffed.
One more question. Did Monument Academy go to an 11th grade?
Not yet. They are currently at the 9th and 10th grade level. You can see the number of 10th graders a little bit up from where they were last year with their 9th grade class. I believe that was a class of 25, so a few more 10th graders at this time, and a bigger 9th grade class than what they had started with the year before. So that is a group that will continue to roll up year over year. You are seeing some increase in numbers at both their elementary because they have additional space or seats available, if you will, as well as some of the middle school numbers also trending upward.
If we look across all of the locations, we're well within capacity, and within meaning we have adequate capacity.
Yes.
Every school except Palmer Ridge High School, which we're exceeding capacity.
And I know we've had some conversation about this most recently, going back to some of our work with the Grace Best Steering Committee. I would want us to, at some point, and I think we can look into this as we kick off the year and go a little bit further into the fall, make sure that we are very clear about program capacity and what the true definition of that is. And let me just give you an example. While Palmer Ridge's program capacity is currently set at 1,200, I can tell you that there are still some classrooms that are not inhabited during the day, meaning we do have some flexibility in terms of where students may be assigned or teachers are assigned to be able to teach. So it does depend to some extent the definition of what we mean by that. I think it's worth a review of that. I know it's probably been some years since we've talked about that concept and what it means in terms of full capacity utilization.
That'll obviously be very helpful as we move forward in the future. Any other questions on attendance? Well, July's kind of hard for me to address. How are you doing in terms of reporting? Are you getting comfortable with?
We still need to finish up. We're just getting started really with the hard work of the audit of last year's financials. Once we run the August payroll, we'll be able to start finalizing numbers and making those final adjustments and get things over to the audit committee that will be reviewing that for our fiscal year ended 21.
Excellent. The change that you've made on the payroll year,
yes,
which moves from...
I'm happy to announce that we've taken steps to align our pay schedules more closely to how we budget for the fiscal year. So what that means for our teaching staff and school-based staff, typically, historically, their pay schedule ran from September through August, a 12-month cycle. We're going to back that up 1 month so that their pay cycle will run from August through July. What this means for our teachers this year, all school-based staff, I keep saying teachers, but it is all school-based staff who don't work a year-round calendar. They will be paid out their final payment for the fiscal year ended. The school year that just ended, they'll be receiving their final payout on that contract in August, and then they will start their new contract in August. So they will actually receive 2 payments in August that'll set them on that new pay schedule. What this means for our year-round staff is that we will be resetting their pay schedule to correspond exactly to the fiscal year, meaning they will be paid from July through June 30th. And the benefit to them this year will be that their pay raises will be retroactive to July 1st.
So at the end of the fiscal year, we have traditionally had a 2-month accrual at the end of June.
This is correct, yes.
To accommodate the payment schedule that occurs in
So
July,
that the expenditures for
August.
that payroll fall in the previous fiscal year as
That's
they
the
were
cost,
budgeted.
right?
Yes.
So the cost for the fiscal year ending next June, the year we're in, won't change. The difference will be, based on what I'm understanding, is instead of an accrual of 2 months next June 30th, it'll be 1 month.
Yes, that is correct. For school-based personnel, year-round personnel, we don't need to do that accrual because they are paid in the proper period.
So a new employee, if they start in July or August, they don't get paid currently until September.
That is right. So new incoming employees will no longer have to wait almost 6 to 8 weeks to get their first paycheck.
Their first paycheck, that'll be in August.
Yes. Yes. So we're very excited about that. I appreciate the support of the board on that.
We're happy to do that. I do want to point out, though, that even though it doesn't impact the P&L, and it does impact the balance sheet and the accrual will change, it does have an impact on our reserves. So we need to be looking at our reserves carefully.
Yeah, we take a big hit to the cash balance right up front. Where we might see that over time is when people leave the district, they won't be paid out as...
I understand.
Yeah.
No, I understand the nuances of the accounting of it, but I think the board does need to recognize that the change in the payroll cycle does have an impact on our cash reserves.
And ultimately could have a positive impact on the district overall, given that I don't know if that's an incentive for new hires to receive a paycheck earlier. Is that different from other districts, or have we been doing it differently from most?
We've heard some trends about other districts having already made such shifts or were already on a similar pay schedule. I know Whitefield District did it a couple of years ago, and I think District 20 did as well.
And are there any para adjustments or that are occurring?
My understanding is that para will adjust if it's a person who's retiring, and so they won't be receiving, especially this first year, they might have been thinking they were going to receive payment through August. That won't change. They'll still receive that final payment, and it's still for the same contracted years of service or months of service, if you will. We will be sending out additional communication to employees that further explains how this impacts each individual employee depending on their role in the district.
Well, I would just add that essentially for the fiscal year July 2021 to June of 2020, or better said, the payroll year from August 1st to July 31st of next year, there's 13 payrolls for certain employees.
Well, that's not. The 13th pay is from last year, though. So when they receive their August pay
No,
check,
I understand the accrual of the
I'm not
actual
sure where you got 13th pay
mechanic.
period.
Well, because they're going
Sorry.
to get 2 checks in August.
Yes, but one is for last contracted year and one is for the new contracted year.
I totally understand that, but if I'm a recipient, I'm getting 2
In the
checks.
That's
calendar
correct.
year, yes.
At
That
a
is correct.
fundamental level, and if you're a new employee,
Gotcha.
you're getting paid a month earlier than you would have otherwise.
Right,
Yes.
so those are not benefits to be ignored in my mind.
Yeah,
Because
makes
the
sense.
district is reducing its reserves because we're trying to do everything we can for what? Our teachers. So we can't offer permanent raises because we've got PPOR restrictions and budgetary restrictions. But through your good efforts and Dr. Summers' good efforts, you found a way to have a 13th.
Yeah, and it is good to point that out, that it is just that one
It's a
time,
one time.
1 year only.
I understand, but it's not inconsequential. Or I don't know. So
We
thank
don't-
you both for figuring out how to do that. And thank the board for, approving the reduction of our reserves.
Any other questions on
Yeah, now you probably are not prepared to update us on the budget.
that? What kind of update on the budget?
I am so happy that you could, I was actually kidding. I didn't expect that.
She was ready.
Yeah.
I would have had to come back with something
Well,
later, probably.
Yeah, so as you know, or hopefully you know, that we have a flexible budgeting process that essentially we approve a budget in June based on the head count that is a pure guess, and we're going to update the actual budget after we get the October count. So hopefully, an October timeframe, if not before Thanksgiving, we'll have a final approved budget. And that we're just thinking of it as a flexible budget so that we don't have to continually report receipt variances based on head count, right? So we will want to see an update of that budgeting process as we move into September and October.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was just going to ask, is there any flags or celebrations or anything that we need to know about? Or any differences?
Not at this point, there sure aren't. I did take a quick glimpse at last year's July financials, just to kind of see where the financial reports came in this year, and they're very similar in terms of our receipts and our expenditures.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And welcome again.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item is C4. Consider approved intergovernmental agreement for the November 2nd, 2021 coordinated election. Vicki, are you going to drive this, or is Dr. Summers? I'm not sure.
This is all Vicky,
All right.
right?
Pardon, I'm sorry. It's good.
Mr.
The
Taylor's
IGA
asking,
basically lays out the procedures, the duties of the designated election official, the county's responsibilities, the district's responsibilities, and it does quote a deposit amount at this time, due September 3rd, I believe.
Completely reviewed by our legal counsel. It's something that we sign, and on September 3rd, we have to do a 50% deposit of just under $10,000, and then we pay the balance sometime later.
Yes.
But it basically is the agreement that allows us to participate in the election process for the 2 seats that are up, District 1 and District 3.
District 3.
Indeed.
And we encourage any of the public that want to run to get the paperwork. You can pick it up at Ms. Wood's office and learn how to be nominated for a nonpartisan role on the D38 Board of Education. Anything else, Vicki?
I don't think
I
so.
do need to make a motion, I believe.
Yes.
So I make a motion to approve the intergovernmental agreement with the El Paso County Board of County Commissioners and the El Paso County Clerk and Recorder concerning the conduct of the November 2nd, 2021 coordinated election, thereby agreeing to follow the provisions of the agreement and the election code, appointing Vicki Wood as the district's designated election official, and authorizing the board president to execute the agreement.
I second.
Any comments or questions? Hearing none, Ms. Wood, would you call the vote?
Ms. Phillips?
Aye.
Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch?
Aye.
Thank you. I'd like to recommend a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Questions, comments, concerns?
None.
We have a vote.
Ms. Phillips?
Aye.
Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch?
Aye.
Formal motion not necessary, but I'm going to go ahead and adjourn this meeting until our next regular board meeting. Our next work session is it on the calendar for September, what's the date? I don't recall.
7th,
7th, a Tuesday, right?
Tuesday at 9:30 a.m.
Excellent. So this meeting is now, thank you all.
Thank you.